My dad handed the family company to my golden brother and called me just labor. So I quietly walked away with their biggest client Reddit stories. Years of keeping machines alive meant nothing once titles were handed out behind a desk. They thought I'd stay grateful and quiet, but the people who actually depended on my work had been paying attention all along. Hi, I'm Dylan Pierce, 29, and the exact moment my dad handed our family company to my golden boy brother and called me just labor, something inside me finally snapped, quietly, professionally, and in a way they never saw coming. Here's the thing. This wasn't some surprise twist. This was the ending they'd been writing for years. My family owns a specialized industrial maintenance company. Heavy machines, precision work, the kind where if you're off by a millimeter, you shut down an entire operation and cost someone 6 figures before lunch. That's my world. I'm a field tech. Not in the I tighten bolts and hope for the best way. I'm the guy clients ask for by name when alarms start screaming and everyone else is panicking. My brother Grant? He's the opposite of panic. Mostly because he's never close enough to the machines to hear them scream. Grant's 33, has a business degree, wears button-downs that never see dirt, and walks like he's permanently late for a TED Talk. Somewhere along the line, my parents decided that degree automatically made him the future king of the company. Didn't matter that he couldn't diagnose a misalignment if it bit him. Didn't matter that he never stayed late fixing a breakdown or crawled under a line at 2 a.m., covered in oil and bad decisions. He had a diploma. I had grease-stained hands. Guess which one screamed, leadership, to my parents. I was the guy who made sure things worked. Grant was the guy who explained, very confidently, why things worked, after I fixed them. And everyone played along. On this particular day, I was wrapping up a major repair for our biggest client. Their main production line had been acting up, and if it stayed down another hour, the losses would have been brutal. I traced it to a sensor drift caused by a slightly warped bracket. Subtle. Easy to miss if you didn't know what you were looking for. I realigned it, recalibrated the sensor, powered the unit back on, and watched it hum like it was brand new. Logan Brooks, the client rep, let out a breath he'd clearly been holding. Man, he said, shaking his head, every time this place goes sideways, I just hope you're the one who shows up. I smiled. I tried to keep things from exploding. It's kind of my brand. He laughed, relief written all over his face. Clients like Logan didn't care about titles or org charts. They cared about results. And they knew exactly who delivered those. I was packing up my tools, enjoying the rare moment where a job ended cleanly, when Grant walked in. Perfect timing. As always. He clapped his hands once, loud enough to announce his presence like royalty entering a hall. Excellent, he said. My team executed the plan flawlessly. I stared at him. Because unless the plan was, Dylan fixes everything while Grant's nowhere near the building, I didn't remember seeing it. Logan glanced between us, polite smile stretched just thin enough to show confusion. Grant launched into his usual routine. Big words. Strategic vision. Streamlined execution. He gestured at the equipment like it was a prop in a presentation he'd rehearsed in the mirror. Upper management will be pleased, Grant added. Upper management. In a family business. Where upper management was literally our parents eating lunch at the same desk. I leaned against my toolbox and stayed quiet. Years of practice. Once Grant wandered off, probably to report his success, Logan leaned closer and asked quietly, Does he always do that? Only when he's conscious, I said. Logan chuckled, then sobered. People notice more than you think. That stuck with me. Because as I drove back to the shop, dirt still on my hands, I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone saw my value except the people who owned my last name. And deep down, I already knew what was coming next. The conversation about the future. And I knew exactly where they planned to put me in it. A couple days after that job, my dad, Howard, called me into the office and said the words that always mean you're about to be talked at, not talked to. We need to discuss the future. We sat in the office that smelled like old coffee and authority. Me in the cheap folding chair. My parents behind the desk. Grant already there, leaning back like he'd been waiting for his coronation invite. The seating arrangement alone told me everything I needed to know. Howard didn't ease into it. No appreciation speech. No acknowledgement of the client I'd just saved. Grant will be taking over the business when I retire. That was it. One sentence. Clean. Final. Grant didn't look surprised. He looked satisfied. Like someone who just watched a long-term investment finally mature. Howard continued, listing reasons that sounded suspiciously like bullet points from Grant's resume. Oldest son. Business degree. Long-term vision. Structure. Strategy. All the words that sound impressive until you ask the speaker to identify a torque spec. Marianne, my mom, nodded along. It's the logical choice, she said in her calm, conflict-killing tone. Grant added, this is really about leadership. Guiding the company into its next phase. I waited until they were done congratulating themselves. I'm not asking to be the boss, I said. I'm asking for a stake. Some ownership. A say. I'm the one in the field keeping clients from walking. Grant gave me a sympathetic smile that made my jaw tighten. You're great with the physical side, he said slowly, like explaining something to a child. But ownership requires a different skill set. Different skill set. Right. Howard leaned forward. You'll always have a job here. After I'm gone, you'll be taken care of financially. After he's gone. Translation: wait your turn like a good employee. That's when it clicked. They didn't see me as family in this business. They saw me as infrastructure. Necessary, but replaceable. I stood up. So I'm family enough to do the work, but not family enough to help steer the ship. Howard frowned. You're overreacting. Marianne followed me out after the meeting, hand on my arm, voice soft. I think you're taking this too personally. Your father knows what's best. She told me to accept my role. To stop making it hard for them. For them. I nodded. Said, got it. She smiled relieved. Like she'd fixed the problem. But walking out to my truck, something in me shut off. No anger. No drama. Just clarity. I wasn't invisible by accident. This was by design. The next morning, I handed my dad my 2 weeks' notice. No speech. No emotion. Just paper. He glanced at it and said, We'll manage. Grant found out within minutes. Hope you've got a plan. He smirked. This field isn't exactly overflowing with opportunities for your type of work. My type. I nodded and walked away, already knowing something he didn't. People had been noticing. Grant wasted no time trying to erase me before I was even gone. By lunchtime on my first day after giving notice, my schedule magically changed. No major jobs. No key clients. Just filler work. Rusted secondary units. Obsolete equipment. The kind of stuff nobody cared about unless it completely failed, and even then it was more annoying than urgent. It was petty. And very intentional. Grant started around with a clipboard like he'd been promoted to general of a very small, very imaginary army. At one point he stopped behind me while I was elbow deep in a unit that hadn't been powered on since Obama's first term. Good progress, he said, pretending to understand what he was looking at. Tomorrow I'll need you to train our new hire. I looked up. New hire? Started today, Grant said. Very green. Go slow. Translation: keep Dylan busy, out of sight, and feeling obsolete. The kid, Austin, wasn't the problem. He was eager, nervous, and clearly thrown into the deep end. No gloves. Didn't know the equipment names. Didn't even know which tools were his. I trained him anyway. Because that's who I am. I don't sabotage people just because my brother's insecure. Grant hovered nearby a few times, making sure I stayed far away from anything Logan might see. And then I heard it. We crossed paths in the hallway as he was talking to another employee. Grant didn't lower his voice. "We'll be fine once Dylan's gone," he said. "He's not essential. Never was. Just labor." He said it like a fact. Like gravity. I didn't react. Didn't slow down. Just kept walking. But something shifted. Not anger. Resolve. 2 days later, Grant went a step further. I overheard him on the phone with a vendor. "Dylan? He's temporary. Not a lead tech. More like transitional labor." Transitional. After a decade. That same afternoon, I got assigned to a job at the client's main facility, the one place Grant actually needed me because nobody else could fix half the equipment there without calling me every 10 minutes. Logan was waiting when I arrived. He looked surprised. "Didn't think you'd be here," he said. "Grant said you were tied up?" "Miracles happen," I replied. While I worked, Logan watched quietly. Then he said, "I should probably tell you something. We've been having issues with your brother. Paperwork delays. Wrong pricing. Scheduling problems. He's difficult." I kept my hands moving. "You're the reason this place runs smooth," Logan continued. "Victor's been asking what it would take to bring this in-house." I finally paused. That wasn't small talk. That was a door cracking open. When I finished the job, Logan added, "People notice more than you think." By the time I got back to my truck, my phone buzzed. A forwarded email from another employee. Grant had written to a vendor. "Dylan won't be a major point of contact anymore. He's more temporary labor than lead tech." I stared at the screen and laughed once. Quiet. Sharp. Grant thought he was burying me. What he was actually doing was clearing the way. 2 days before my last shift, Grant assigned me one more visit at the client's main facility. I knew the move. On paper, it looked like busy work. In reality, it was the one site he couldn't afford to send anyone else to without risking a meltdown. When I walked in, Logan was there like usual, but this time, he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was Victor Hale. Victor's the kind of guy who doesn't raise his voice because he never needs to. Pressed shirt. Calm eyes. The kind of posture that says he's already decided something, and you're just here to confirm it. "Dylan," Victor said, nodding once. "Walk me through what's been going wrong." No greeting. No small talk. Straight to the test. I popped open the panel and explained it clean. Sensor drift. Misaligned bracket. False pressure readings. I didn't dumb it down, but I didn't dress it up either. I fixed the issue in under 10 minutes, powered the machine up, and watched it run smooth. Victor glanced at Logan. Logan nodded. Victor turned back to me. "You know your work. That's the idea." He didn't rush the next part. Let the hum of the machine fill the space. "What would it take for you to run this in-house for us?" There it was. No build-up. No flattery. Just opportunity. I told him exactly what I wanted. Contract length. Pay. Equipment control. 2 hires of my choosing. Authority that matched responsibility. I gave him the number without blinking. Logan's eyebrows went up. Victor didn't flinch. "Reasonable," Victor said. "More than reasonable." He laid out the offer. 3-year contract. Salary above industry high-end. Full benefits. Budget control. Direct reporting line to him. It wasn't a job offer. It was permission to build something. "I'll think about it," I said. Victor nodded. "Good. I don't want desperation. I want clarity." We shook hands, not to close the deal, but to acknowledge it. Walking back to my truck, toolbox swinging at my side, I felt steady. Not shocked. Not giddy. Just certain. For the first time in my life, I wasn't asking to be valued. I was being invited. And I already knew my answer. But before anything became official, I decided to tell my family. Not because they deserved the courtesy, but because I wanted it clean. That night, My dad caught me in the shop. Family comes first, he said. Your brother needs you. He didn't apologize. He didn't listen. The next morning, I walked into the office and told them I was taking the offer. Grant smirked. You signed a non-compete. No, I didn't, I said. Show it to me. He couldn't. Howard yelled. Marianne pleaded. Grant accused. I grabbed my bag. I'm done here. I walked out. In the parking lot, I called Victor. I'm in, I said. Good, he replied. Your pay starts now. And just like that, the door closed behind me. They were still arguing inside. I was already gone. Part 5. The first thing that surprised me about not working for my family anymore was how quiet my mornings became. No waking up already irritated. No rehearsing arguments in my head before my feet hit the floor. Just coffee, silence, and the weird realization that nobody was about to minimize me before 8 a.m. Victor wasn't kidding about. Pay starts now. My start date wasn't ceremonial. It was practical. No point paying you to stare at a wall, he'd said. Walking into the new facility on my first official day felt normal. And that was the point. Clean floors. Equipment that wasn't held together by hope. Air conditioning that didn't sound like it was begging for mercy. Assigned parking. That alone felt like a promotion. They gave me a small office. Door that closed. Desk that didn't wobble. A fridge that didn't smell like mystery leftovers from 2014. Nothing flashy. Just functional. Respectful. Victor shook my hand and said, It's your department. Build it how you see fit. No micromanaging. No speeches about loyalty. Just trust. I ordered proper equipment. Not the cheapest option. Not the fanciest. The right ones? The kind that don't fail quietly and then ruin everyone's day. I interviewed candidates myself and hired 2 people who actually wanted to learn instead of pretending they already knew everything. Ray had 20 years of experience and 0 ego. Corey was younger, sharp, and asked questions without feeling threatened. Within weeks, the 3 of us were running the line smoother than it had ever run under the old contract. No chaos. No fire drills. No pretending. 3 weeks in, Logan pulled me aside during a walk-through. Thought you should know, he said. Your dad and brother called Victor. Tried to talk him out of hiring you. I didn't even feel surprised. What did Victor say? I asked. Logan smirked. He hung up. That was it. No argument. No justification. Conversation over. A few days later, I heard through my cousin that my family's business was downsizing. Losing clients. Struggling without the contract they'd taken for granted. I felt bad for the workers. Not for my parents. Not for Grant. About 2 months in, my phone rang. Unknown number. Dylan, my dad said. I want to offer you a partnership. Same table. Different crumbs. I listened, then said, You already chose your future. Stick with it. I hung up. That night, sitting in my office, I realized something. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped carrying people who refused to walk with me. And for the first time in my life, that felt like freedom. The funny thing about leaving a place that never respected you is how fast the silence turns loud on their end. I didn't hear it directly at first. It came in pieces. Side comments. Second-hand updates. People who still work there texting me things like, Hey man, you hearing what's going on over here? Or, You picked the right time to bounce. According to my cousin Tessa, the cracks showed almost immediately. Grant tried to step into the field role. Not fully, of course. He mostly oversaw things. Which meant he stood nearby, gave vague instructions, and got visibly irritated when technicians asked questions he couldn't answer. Jobs that used to take me an hour stretched into half-day disasters. Machines went down longer. Clients started asking for explanations instead of nodding along politely. And explanations were not Grant's strength when he didn't control the variables. The biggest problem? The client I now worked for. The one account that kept the Pierce business stable through slow months. Once that contract officially ended, the math stopped mattering. Howard started cutting hours. Then overtime. Then people. Good workers. Quiet ones. The kind who showed up, did their jobs, and didn't play favorites. They paid the price for decisions they never made. That part sat heavy with me. Not guilt, but sadness. They deserved better leadership than what my family gave them. Meanwhile, my world kept moving forward. Victor checked in once a week, not to hover, just to ask, "What's working? What's not?" When I told him something needed changing, it changed. No ego contest. No lectures. Just solutions. Ray and Corey settled in fast. We had a rhythm. Jokes during downtime. Focus when it mattered. Mutual respect without the weird tension I'd grown used to. One afternoon, Corey looked at me and said, "Can I be honest?" "Always," I said. "This is the first job I've had where I don't feel stupid for asking questions." That hit harder than any promotion ever could. A few days later, my mom texted me for the first time since I left. Just, "We need to talk." No apology. No acknowledgement. Just need. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "What about?" 3 dots. Long pause. "Your father's under a lot of stress." There it was. Not "how are you?" Not "we were wrong." Just pressure management. "I'm sorry he's stressed," I typed. "I hope things improve." That was it. I didn't add more. Didn't open the door wider than I wanted. Because here's the truth I'd finally learned. Every time I made myself available, they took it as permission to step back into control. And I wasn't doing that again. Not for guilt. Not for blood. Not for a version of family that only valued me when they were drowning. The silence after I sent that message was peaceful. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to fill it. About 6 months after I left, the call finally came. Not from my mom. Not from my dad. From Grant. I almost didn't answer. Old reflex. But curiosity won. "Dylan," he said, and his voice already sounded thinner than I remembered. Less polished. Less certain. "You got a minute?" "I've got one," I said, sitting back in my chair. There was a pause. Long enough to tell me this wasn't part of a strategy deck. "Things are rough," he admitted. "We lost 2 more accounts." I didn't respond. Silence does a lot of work if you let it. "Dad's thinking maybe you could come in as a consultant," Grant continued. "Short term. Just to stabilize things." Consultant. I almost laughed. "And who would I report to?" I asked. Another pause. "Me," he said. Quieter this time. There it was. The whole problem unchanged. "Grant," I said calmly, "you didn't want a partner. You wanted labor. You still do." "That's not fair," he snapped, then immediately softened. "Okay, maybe it was before. But things are different now. Different because it hurt." I looked out through the glass wall of my office at my team working, focused, confident, unafraid to make decisions. "What's changed?" I asked, "besides the consequences showing up?" He didn't have an answer. "I can't," I said finally. "Even if I wanted to, which I don't, it wouldn't fix what's broken." "You're really just going to let the business fail?" he asked, bitterness creeping back in. "No," I said. "You did that. I just stopped holding it up." He hung up without saying goodbye. A week later, my dad showed up in person. He stood in the lobby of my new building, hands in his coat pockets, looking smaller than I remembered. Older. Tired. We sat in a conference room. "Neutral ground. You were always good," he said after a while. I should have listened more. It wasn't an apology. But it was closer than I ever expected. I didn't need to be king. I said. I just needed to matter. He nodded, eyes fixed on the table. We made mistakes. I noticed. Not Grant. Not him. We. He asked if there was any chance I'd come back. Even temporarily. I shook my head. I'm where I belong now. He left quietly. No shouting. No threats. Just the weight of choices settling where they belong. When I got back to my desk, Corey asked if everything was okay. Yeah, I said honestly. Just tying up some old threads. That night, driving home, I realized something important. Closure doesn't always feel like relief. Sometimes it just feels like confirmation. Hi, it's funny what settles in after the dust finally stops moving. Not relief. Not victory. Just a calm, steady sense that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. A year after I left, my life didn't look flashy from the outside. No dramatic social media posts. No revenge tour. Just work that mattered, people who respected it, and evenings that didn't feel like emotional recovery sessions. The department I built was running clean. 0 emergency shutdowns. Predictable maintenance cycles. Victor barely had to step in anymore, which was his favorite kind of success. Logan still stopped by sometimes, mostly to joke that stealing me from my family had been the best business decision he'd ever made. Ray bought a house. Corey got promoted. Watching that felt better than any title I'd ever been denied. As for the Pierce business, it didn't explode. It just shrank. Slowly. Quietly. The way things do when the foundation was never as strong as everyone pretended. Grant stayed in charge, still talking about transition phases and market shifts. My parents stayed loyal to the story they'd chosen, even when reality kept poking holes in it. I wasn't angry anymore. You can't stay mad at something you no longer need. One afternoon, Victor stopped by my office door. You ever regret it? He asked casually. I didn't even have to think. No, I said. I regret staying as long as I did. He nodded, satisfied. That was the whole conversation. Here's the thing nobody tells you when you grow up in a family business. Sometimes the hardest part isn't leaving the job. It's leaving the role they decided you were born into. The quiet one. The reliable one. The one who carries weight without being seen. I didn't destroy my family. I didn't steal anything. I didn't prove them wrong, in some cinematic way. I just stopped accepting less than I was worth. And it turns out, when you do that, the people who only valued you for what you carried, they feel very light once you put them down. After that conversation with Victor, life didn't suddenly turn into a montage of wins. It just stayed stable. And that was new. Stability was something I'd never really had before. At the family company, every calm week was just a pause before Grant created a new mess or my parents decided to restructure something that wasn't broken. There was always tension humming under the surface, like a machine running too hot. Now, the days were predictable in the best way. I'd come in early, check reports, walk the floor, talk with Ray and Corey about what needed attention. Problems still happened. Machines don't magically stop breaking, but when they did, nobody panicked or pointed fingers. We fixed them. End of story. The weirdest part was how often people actually listened to me. Not nodded politely. Not waited their turn to override me. Actually listened. That took some getting used to. About 3 months in, Victor called me into his office. No urgency, no edge. Just, got a minute? I sat down, half expecting some corporate surprise. Instead, he slid a report across the desk. These are the downtime numbers since you came on board, he said. They were absurdly good. He leaned back. This is why I don't care about resumes as much as I care about results. I thanked him, but what stuck with me was the absence of conditions. No. Keep it up or else. No reminder of how replaceable I was. Just acknowledgement. Later that week, I ran into Logan in the hallway. He laughed and said, You know your old shop tried to underbid us to get the contract back, right? I raised an eyebrow. How'd that go? They promise faster turnaround times than physics allows, he said. Victor didn't even counter. That was the moment I finally stopped wondering if I'd made the right choice. Not because my family failed harder. Not because I won. But because I didn't feel pulled backward anymore. The last update I got about the Pierce business came from Tessa again. Grant was still in charge. Still insisting things were temporary. Still blaming the market, the economy, suppliers, anyone but himself. My parents were quieter now. Less confident. They didn't call again. And honestly, that was fine. I didn't need closure in the form of apologies or confessions. I got it in something much more practical, a life where my effort matched my outcome. Every so often, I'd catch myself thinking about how different things could have been if they just treated me like a partner instead of labor. But that thought didn't hurt anymore. It felt academic. Like reviewing a design flaw after the system's already been replaced. Turns out, walking away wasn't the dramatic ending. It was the correction. The first real test came from someone I didn't expect, myself. About 5 months in, Victor told me he wanted to expand our operation to a second facility. Bigger footprint. More pressure. More visibility. The kind of move that used to make my stomach knot because expansion at the family business always meant more work for me and more credit for someone else. This time, it meant something different. I want you to design the setup, Victor said. Timeline, staffing, equipment. Then tell me what you need. No second guessing. No committee. Just trust. I went home that night and realized I was pacing my kitchen like I used to before family meetings. Same restless energy. Different cause. Back then, I was bracing to be dismissed. Now, I was nervous because failure would actually be mine. That hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't scared of messing up the machines. I knew the work. What scared me was ownership, real ownership. The kind where you can't blame bad leadership or inherited dysfunction if something goes sideways. For the first time, if I dropped the ball, it would be on me. And I liked that. I spent the next 2 weeks mapping everything out. No shortcuts. No guesswork. Ray helped me vet equipment options. Corey ran simulations and caught an efficiency issue I would have missed a year ago. I let him own that fix fully. Watched his confidence jump about 3 levels overnight. When I presented the plan to Victor, he barely interrupted. At the end, he said, "Approved. Let's move." No revisions. No politics. That was the moment it really clicked. This wasn't just a better job. It was a healthier system. One where competence actually stacked upward instead of getting filtered out. A few days later, my mom emailed me. Not a call. Not a text. An email. Long, careful. Polite. She wrote about how hard things had been. How stressed your father is. How Grant is doing his best under difficult circumstances. Then she said she hoped we could find our way back to being a family. I read it twice. Then I noticed what wasn't there. No. "I'm sorry." No. "We were wrong." No acknowledgement of how they treated me. Just an invitation to step back into the same dynamic, only now, they needed something. I didn't reply right away. I didn't feel angry. I felt distant. Like reading about a town I used to live in but no longer recognize. When I finally answered, I kept it short. "I hope things improve. I'm doing well where I am. I'm not looking to revisit the past." I hit send and felt nothing but relief. That night, I sat on my balcony, city noise humming below, and realized something that would have sounded insane to me a year earlier. I didn't need them to understand. I'd spent my whole life trying to explain my value to people who benefited from pretending not to see it. Walking away didn't make me bitter. It made me lighter. And the future? For the first time, it felt like something I was actually building, brick by brick, instead of something I was waiting to be allowed into. A few weeks after the expansion plan got approved, I ran into something I hadn't expected at all: doubt from the outside. Not from my team. Not from Victor. From people who knew my family. An old vendor recognized my last name during a meeting and said, half joking, "So you're the Pierce who walked away, huh?" He meant it lightly, but there was curiosity under it. The kind that assumes you must have done something reckless to leave a family business. I smiled and said, "I didn't walk away. I walked forward." He laughed, but I could tell he didn't fully get it. And that was fine. That same week, Ray pulled me aside after a long shift. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said. "Sure." "Why didn't you just fight harder over there?" he asked. "You clearly knew your stuff. You could have pushed back." I thought about that for a moment. "I did," I said. "For years. The problem wasn't effort. It was that the game was rigged. And at some point, the smartest move isn't to argue with the rules. It's to stop playing." Ray nodded slowly. "Yeah. That tracks." The second facility came online faster than expected. Fewer hiccups than projected. When something went wrong, people spoke up early instead of hiding mistakes. That alone saved weeks of stress. One afternoon, Corey caught a potential failure during a routine check. Nothing dramatic yet, but it would have been, eventually. He flagged it, documented it, and proposed a fix before I even asked. Watching him do that, I felt something shift again. This was what leadership was supposed to look like. Not dominance. Not control. Creating a space where people didn't have to protect their ego to protect their job. Around that time, I heard the Pierce business finally lost the building lease and downsized to a smaller shop. No announcement. No big fallout. Just a quiet retreat. Grant didn't call again. And I realized I wasn't waiting for that call anymore. There's a strange myth that leaving means you're running away. But the truth is, staying in a place that refuses to see you, that's what traps you. Leaving is just choosing motion over stagnation. I still think about my family sometimes. Not with anger. More like acceptance. They made choices. So did I. The difference is, I can live with mine. The turning point came quietly, the way real ones usually do. It was a Tuesday. No alarms, no meetings marked urgent, no dramatic phone calls. Just a normal day. I was reviewing maintenance logs when Victor stopped by my office and leaned against the doorframe. "You've built something solid here," he said. "So solid that corporate wants to use this department as the model for 2 other regions." I blinked. "Meaning?" "Meaning I need you to step back from daily ops and move into a regional director role. Design, oversight, mentoring. You'd still be technical, but you won't be crawling under machines every day." If he'd offered me that role a year ago, I would have panicked. Felt like I was being pulled away from the work that proved my worth. That old fear, that if I wasn't visibly useful every second, I'd be forgotten. Instead, I surprised myself. "Okay," I said. "But Ray takes my spot. Corey moves up under him." Victor smiled. "Already assumed that." That night, I sat in my apartment thinking about how different that reaction was from the man I used to be. The version of me who believed his value only existed if he was physically present, hands dirty, fixing something someone else broke. Letting go of that belief felt bigger than leaving my family business. A few days later, Grant's name popped up on my phone again. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted to punish him. Because I didn't owe that version of my life access anymore. Instead, I went to Ray's place for a small celebration dinner. Nothing fancy. Just beer, takeout, laughter, and stories about mistakes we'd survived. Corey showed up late, still in work clothes, grinning like he couldn't believe where he'd landed. At one point, Ray raised his glass and said, "To Dylan, for proving you don't need permission to matter." I laughed it off, but later, driving home, that sentence stuck with me. Permission. That was the thing I'd been waiting for my entire life, from my parents, from Grant, from the business, from the idea of family itself. And the moment I stopped waiting, everything moved. I don't know what the next chapter looks like yet. I just know I'll be writing it myself this time. I don't talk about my family much anymore. Not because it still hurts, but because it doesn't control the narrative of my life now. A year after I left, I stood in the observation bay of the second facility we built, watching a line run perfectly. Ray was managing the floor. Corey was training a new hire, calm, confident, patient in the exact way I used to wish someone had been with me. Nobody was rushing. Nobody was posturing. The work was just working. Victor stood beside me and said, "You know, most people think leadership is about being the smartest person in the room." I nodded. I'd met plenty of those. "It's really about making sure the smartest people don't feel small," he added. That sentence landed harder than any promotion. Later that week, I got one last update about the Pierce business. Grant had officially taken over. The company was smaller now. Fewer clients. Less noise. My parents were still insisting everything was fine, still calling it a transition. Still protecting the story instead of learning from it. And for the first time, I felt nothing about it. No anger. No vindication. Just distance. I didn't win by watching them lose. I won the moment I stopped proving myself to people who benefited from undervaluing me. I used to think loyalty meant endurance. Staying quiet. Carrying weight without complaint. Turns out, that wasn't loyalty, it was self-erasure. Now, when people ask how I got here, I don't give speeches. I just say the truth. I left a place that needed my work but not my voice. And I built something where both mattered. That's it. That's the ending. Not fireworks. Not revenge. Just a man finally standing in a life that fits him.